if you take actions, you will have to make decisions. Right? If you choose to paint your bedroom, you will have to choose a color of paint or several colors of paint. Or maybe you don't choose and you get all the paints and you just start throwing paints at the wall, but that is also a choice. Anytime you do stuff, that's where you get to make decision. Why would I make a video about this tautologically simple observation? And it's because I see lots of videos from the new left. I can't even call it the radical left anymore because it's so much more tame than the old radical left. The radical left that wasn't on the side of the FBI, the radical left that didn't spend all its time talking about voting because it had things to do. And that is actually kind of the point, is that there is so much of a sense of disempowerment in the social and political landscape right now, and a lot of it comes from the fact that people spend their time of, it's hard to even say political engagement, but people are spending their time looking at the decisions of world leaders, like not even like in their local province, like just looking at the decisions of world leaders, Fortune 100 corporations, etc., and learning about them and like really struggling to make sure that they have all the right arguments when they talk about these things that are so incredibly removed from them that they will never be able to do anything about. You will feel empowered if you get to make effectual choices, and you get to make effectual choices when you do things. The old left that I grew up in was a left made of projects. It was made of co-op grocery stores and punk bookstores and music venues and bike shops where people could build bikes for free that were constantly scavenging from the bigger commercial shops, and where people were scrapping together resources to solve initially problems with bikes, but eventually like whole life problems for each other, because a tight community grows around anything that you consistently do with people who show up and keep showing up when things are hard. Doing stuff is where you get to make choices. And if you get to make choices and your choices have any effect on the world and on the lives of the other people that you're doing the stuff with, then you will be empowered because you are having an effect. It's really that simple. The disempowerment that people feel it's not because the things that they're observing that world leaders and corporations and things are doing wrong are inaccurate. Like, yeah, everything that people are talking about, like, yeah, there's these administrations and leaders are doing these things, and most of them are very awful, but it has nothing to do with your degree of empowerment, like your experience of empowerment. You will have the experience of empowerment if you go out and you do stuff and you make choices, and your choices have effects, and then you make different choices and you get different effects. You will feel empowered, and you will feel like some corner of the world is yours. And if you do it with other people, that corner gets exponentially bigger. I'm going to just flatly assert that that's what you need to do if you want to have more sovereignty in the world, is you have to build the muscle of owning decisions, of doing stuff, making choices, seeing the effects of those choices, and rinsing and repeating. Frequently, people who have big criticisms about world leaders, cultural phenomena, all of these different things, like, they are in some very sensible or defensible perspective, or a certain constrained analysis, very, very correct in their diagnosis. Like, if you scope down their whole analysis to the fact of the problematic nature or the pains that one can point out. If someone points to contemporary capitalism and says, well, there's pain here, and this pain is associated with these policies, in many cases, at least in the initial assertions of the analysis, they're totally correct. They might talk about how historically patriarchy has turned women into property in all these different places and different times, and like scoped down to the instances that they're referring to, yeah, they're totally correct. So you can be correct in your critique of global world leaders, and still completely full of shit when it comes to understanding how large the scope in which you're correct is, and B, everything with regard to prognosis. So there are lots and lots of movements right now that are looking at like world problems and saying like these people did this thing and it's super scummy, and there's a lineage of them going back hundreds of years and doing this scummy thing, and it's like, yeah, that scummy thing they're talking about has happened, and like it is definitely associated with this group, but like in some cases it's like a minority portion of that group, and we're failing to understand the scope of time. Like, you know, the total number of priests who have molested children. People are like, that's what Catholicism's about. It's just like, there are a lot of priests. And, like, yeah, I definitely acknowledge that in some places and times, like, that problem is, like, way disproportionately represented. And there are probably other social things contributing to that being endemic in, you know, certain environments and times. But, like, I don't think that's what Catholicism's about. And this isn't a defense of Catholicism. This is just saying it's really hard to recognize the scope of one's criticism when it's over massive swaths of time. So we can be correct in asserting that a problem has existed, and we can be wholly incorrect in trying to understand the proportion of that problem by comparison to situations that have roughly the same shape that don't include that problem, right? So scoping is a really difficult. It's a difficult problem of social design and it's like social diagnosis. But then the other thing is believing that because you have an accurate read on what a problem is means that you have like some sort of insight into what needs to be changed, or where the problem comes from. Even like, you can totally look around and see, like, oh, this is a problem. It's happening right now in Colorado with guns. Like, oh, like, there are a lot of guns and people get shot a lot, so we should get rid of the guns. And it's like, well, we're surrounded by other states that still have guns, and all of the criminals are getting guns through means that aren't being limited right now. And probably we're making some, like, totally spot on about, like, that there's a problem, but, like, all of the prognosis that is happening in Colorado right now with regard to that problem is just like, it's observably idiotic, and this happens constantly. So people who don't do stuff, and I include in that politicians don't do stuff. Politicians are like so theoretical. They in almost zero cases do they have their boots on the ground with a significant number of the issues they talk about. A lot of, like, some politicians, the best politicians, come from a place where they have extreme expertise in one field. And then they end up having to make decisions about a bunch of things that they're just flat wrong about, and don't understand. The problem there is that they don't do stuff. We have to do stuff. We have to, like physically, in collaboration with other people, which does involve talking, it does involve reading and these intellectual ideas, but you have to be boots on the ground. You have to have your fingers in the actual machinations of things, otherwise all of your ideas are full of shit. And you have to recognize that, you know, like, everybody who feels disempowered because they're not doing something, and they're all of the ideas about how to fix the things that they have lofty critiques of are totally worthless. Like, and it's a sometimes uncomfortable truth, but actually, like, is a super liberating truth as soon as you realize that there are actually things you can do. So go out and do stuff.